This is a virtual reading of Conspirators, To Each His Own Agenda by Matt Gupta.
Chapter 37. The Aegean Sea. The fleet took up its formation. All 50 of the ships were placed in the crescent formation, facing their opponents and waiting for the battle to be joined. All of the melee ships were at the front, flanked on both sides by the missile ships, all armed with men with javelins and slings. At the back, in the center, were the artillery ships, vessels with 3 ballista on them, and with a variety of different ammunition, ranging from grappling hooks to flaming spears. The pirates had taken the bait and were moving against them in a full assault. Though the numbers were equal, their formation was much wider than the kingdom's. The wind was carrying them along fast towards them. "How do we outflank them now?" Aquilla asked Andir. "They will have to close their ranks to engage us," Andir smiled. "Our ships are lighter and faster. Move our heavy ships to intercept and hold the center, and let our flanking forces deal the damage to them. When they're done, we fold around them and crush them." "Well, this should be fun," Amicus said, nodding in agreement. "We wait for your word, sir," Andir declared. "The men have their orders." The pirate ships were closing. They had abandoned the use of their sails now and were rowing towards them. Aquilla turned to Andir and gave a single nod. "Now!" Andir shouted, so that his voice echoed across the water. The men on the ships exploded into action. Suddenly, the whole fleet was moving and moving fast. The ships met in an instant, and in one thunderous moment the ships collided. Despite Andir's warning, some of the ships had met in a clumsy frontal ram of each other and were now locked in battle, and Aquila's ship was no different. "Pilam!" Andir shouted, calling for the throwing spears. The men on the ships raised their spears and threw them with all their might. This was where the training was coming in. Each of the spears hit its mark and the pirates fell, but there were many more pirates to each ship. The pirates swung from the riggings of the ships and leapt straight onto the kingdom's ships. Each of them had white paint in the form of a skeleton on their bodies. They were terrifying to behold. They were screaming as they landed, and battle was joined. The warriors on the ship battled them with everything they had. They swung their swords around and smashed their shields against them in a frenzy of movement and noise. While the fighting continued on his ship, the others were engaging the ships on the flanks. 3 ships to each of the pirates. 2 ships to divert the pirate ship into a horizontal position, and the other ship to ram it right in the middle where it was weakest. The right flank was winning their local battle. The ships that were locked there were now surrounded and vulnerable to ramming. The ships broke apart when they were rammed on both sides. The screams of the men as they fell into the abyss rang across the water. The left was following the same pattern, but on this side were the more veteran forces for the pirates with more powerful ships, and they were holding their own. Aquilla had no mind for this, however. He was in full engagement on his own ship. He had been boarded on both sides, and was in danger of being boarded at the front also. He was in the full fray now, leading the repulsing forces in the middle of the ship. His form was as perfect as was the sharpness of his sword. He had no parries, blocks, or deflection, but moved from kill move to kill move with flawless focus. His sword was deadly and beautiful in the light, longer than a longsword, but not as long as a two-handed. Its reach was beyond that of the swords of the pirates, and the deck was covered in the bodies of his victims, their blood staining the oak wood. The whole deck shook as the ballista shots tore through the hull of a ship that was keeping them pinned to their right. Pieces of wood and metal nails exploded onto their ship. A huge, jagged piece of an axe flew past Aquilla and tore his hair from his head. He fell to the ground, blood falling down his face. His scalp was cut, his sword clattered away, and a pirate wasted no time to fall upon him, knife in hand. Aquilla wrestled with the man, holding the knife a mere inch away from his eye as blood dripped into it. Then suddenly his face was drenched in blood. Yet again, the pirate's neck had exploded at the tip of Amicus's sword. Before either man could act, a pirate reaver, a man chosen personally by the fleet master to be his elite guard, drove at Amicus with two swords. The metal was lost in a wash of grey steel and sprays of blood, until Amicus slid to his knees through the slippery blood and cut the man's legs. In a single moment, he was on his feet again and had leapt backwards, his sword carrying him into the man's head. The man swayed for a moment, taking the blade out of Amicus's grip and stuck in his head, until Amicus tore it out inverted and swung to take another in the back. The small space of deck was theirs, and Amicus helped Aquilla to his feet. "This is no time to be lying down on the job," he grunted, laughing slightly. "You forget to who you're talking to." Aquilla slapped his hand away, but then he pulled Amicus down to avoid an axe to his head. He swept his sword up into his hands and slashed the man's neck. "I'll consider us even then," Amicus yelled, and they went back to the battle. Arndir was surprised by their battle prowess and was using it as a rally point for his soldiers, and despite the fact that they were outflanked, they were pushing the pirates back. When the last man fell, Arndir sounded that the ship was theirs. The crew let out a cheer, but the battle was far from over. They had more ships to utilize. Many of the kingdom ships were pinned 2-1 against the pirates, so the enemy were free to maneuver despite the tactics and equal number of ships. "Ram them!" Arndir shouted, pointing his sword forward as a pirate ship was moving to intercept another ship. The men on the oars below deck heard him, and the oars sprang into action. Their rowing was haphazard and ill-timed at first, stunting the speed. Once the men found their rhythm, the speed increased. The ram tore into the pirate ship slightly off the center, but the damage was done. Arndir laughed, but looked over to his shoulder. "Reverse. Protect the ballista." Aquilla rushed to him. The pirates had broken the left flank and were creeping towards the artillery ships. "Target those ships," he shouted to the men on the ballista ships. "Aquilla," Amicus shouted, "to the west." Aquilla looked. Tiny black sails could be seen against the setting sun. "More pirates," he whispered to himself. "Father, save us." He looked hopelessly at Arndir. "Protect the artillery," Arndir shouted. "We must retreat if we are to survive." "No," Aquilla shouted, as a ship exploded into flames. He grabbed Arndir. "My first battle will not be a defeat." "Then die here." Arndir pushed Aquilla away to bellow to the rest of the fleet. "Pin that ship in place. Get the artillery out of the line of fire." The ships began moving, but the majority of them were locked in combat or had pirates defeating the soldiers on board. The prospect of the oncoming ships was affecting the morale of both sides. Aquila's ship smashed into the pirate ship that was sneaking around the left, but it didn't sink. The rear of the ship had no ram, and they had simply rocked them over. The ship had stopped, however, and the ballista were firing without restraint at them. The Royal Navy had won the local battle at the right flank. A cry echoed around from this segment, and word began to spread that the pirate leader had fallen. These ships broke off from the victory and began to encroach on the center lines. The lines were too crowded, unfortunately, and the ships simply compacted themselves into a huge wooden mass in the center. The forces were now locked in hand-to-hand combat in the middle, or standing uselessly on the outer perimeter. Aquilla was now surrounded and in the thick of the fighting. The pirate forces on the horizon were closing in, both rowing and using the wind. "We appear to be being beaten back," Amicus said casually. He was back to back with Aquilla. "It gets worse," Andir said, pointing to the left. A pirate ship had caught fire and was set on a collision course for the mass of the ships. If it made contact, many ships, pirate and navy alike, would be lost. "Destroy that ship," Aquilla shouted. They were standing right at the back of the ship, whilst the rest of their remaining crew had formed a shield wall in front of them. "Ballista, focus fire," Andir shouted over him. The new coming ships reached the mass of ships in the middle approaching them on the pirate side, but they weren't slowing down or moving to avoid their comrades. There was a thunderous crash as the new ships smashed straight into the pirate lines. The battle suddenly stopped as both sides were hit by what had just happened. For a long time, there was silence. Then Aquilla heard a familiar voice, harsh, commanding, and Greek. "Prepare for close quarters combat. Attack!" A terrifying battle cry came up from the ships, and suddenly men poured out of the ships, all of them sporting the emblems of the Sea Ward, swords glinting in the red sun. "Raise the colours," the man shouted. "For the prince, for Alistair." The pirates suddenly sprung back into battle, but the arrival of 50 more ships had the pirates outnumbered and outflanked. The blue flags of Seaward were being raised, and the horns of the kingdom sounded with terrifying effect. With that, the vanguard closed in and broke through the pirate forces. The commander leapt off of his ship with a contingent of spearmen. Admiral Mistnir, the custodian of the Seaward Navy, had come. He had a sword in each hand, and he let out a huge roar as he rushed the pirate lines. As they crossed the length of a ship, he leapt off of the rigging and swung his swords in a cross down a pirate's chest. He moved with a ferocity that was not expected with his build or mannerisms outside of the battlefield. His strikes were not clean. He was fighting for the most barbaric kills and bringing a wave of terror with him and his men. Soon, Aquilla and he were on the same ship, fighting all but back to back. The swords flew in all directions, as did blood and bone. Aquilla found himself getting pushed back against the mast of his ship, his long blade becoming more and more cumbersome in the confined space. As he killed a pirate with an impaling stab, he found he did not have space to withdraw and remove the blade. He tried to tear the blade through the man, but his huge frame prevented such an act. He ducked under a blow to his head and was forced to grab the only thing left him, a broken and lethal blade gifted to him by Conditoris, and up until this point a secret. His hand closed around the leather-covered hilt and pulled out the blade he held up his back. He slashed upward with the blade, cutting the man attacking him from his manhood to his chin. He stabbed him in the throat to finish him and then slashed at another. He was as well versed with the blade as he was with his sword, and before long, many men had fallen. He had the room to remove his sword from the body of the first man. As he did, he saw that Mistnir had seen him with the dagger and was looking curiously at him, leaning on a pirate he'd impaled and standing there as if he was in a tavern. When they locked eyes, he nodded and was taken back to the battle. His focus on Aquilla left him. The pirate ship that was ablaze was now under constant attack, but the damage to it was not enough to sink it. The wind was carrying it forward towards the killing zone, but suddenly, out of nowhere, a ship tore out of the smoke and smashed straight into the ship's side. The hull was broken in so many places that the ship simply sailed straight through it and split the wooden beams clean in half. The battle was quickly won after this point. The pirates who had left their ships to engage the navy had been surrounded in the center and were begging for mercy in their native tongue. The battle was over. Mistnir finished decapitating a pirate ravager and turned to Aquilla. "My lord," he called, smiling and tossing the head away as if he'd simply put down a drinking goblet. "What should we do with the survivors?" "Admiral," Aquilla smiled, taking his arm. "It is good to see you. What would you suggest?" "We cannot have word reach Gladium of this victory," Mistnir advised, looking down at the men now kneeling on the deck before them. "Take them," he nodded to his men. There was a single moment where everything stood still. Then the seaward marines thrust their spears into each man, slaughtering them all. Mistnir didn't even wait for them to fall. "Men," he turned to face the combined crews, framed in the sunset. "The sea is ours." The men all raised up in a cheer that seemed more like a howl of a wolf than a roar. "Your timing was most fortuitous," Andir said from behind them, after the tumult died down. He was sporting a wound to his right side, but was still standing. "How is it you came to be here to save us?" "Yes, indeed," Aquilla pressed. "How is it you are here?" "Let us discuss such things later." Mistnir made a shrugging motion, and then turned to look out to sea. "We must take care of our friends and our enemies. Let us dock, and then all will be answered." The forces of the kingdom took dock in a nearby cut in the land. The wounded screams filled the enclosed space. All of the ships, Aquilla's, Mistnir's, and the captured pirate ships, numbered almost 100, though 20 of Aquilla's force was destroyed. All the ships, however, were docked on the shore of the beach, where the crew were in camp. The men were celebrating victory, but it was a quiet thing. Once again, they were in foreign territory and among enemy land. Like before, the captains were in council along the shoreline. Admiral Mistnir held the commanding place in this meeting. "I ask you again." Aquilla entered their circle without so much as a greeting. "How is it that you are here?" "By order of my liege, Prince Alistair." Mistnir looked up. The constant smile on his face was now lifted. "He sends me to ensure his security in his plans." "You mean his usurpation of the kingdom?" Aquilla grunted. He spat, as did all of his captains. "Aye," Mistnir stood proudly, with no reaction. "He has voiced concern for your own ambition and loyalty. Alistair fears you may abandon your mission to fuck him in the rear. He sent me to hold a position on the trade crossing to seaward to ensure the security of the city." "Then why are you here and not there?" Andir asked. "The trade crossing is behind us, a considerable way behind." "Aye," Mistnir nodded, almost proudly. "It is the discretion of a commander with half a mind in his head to follow orders, but any man can follow an order to the letter. The sea is an ever-shifting thing. The best way I can follow my orders and secure my city against you is to be by your side, keep you on track for your mission and ensure your success. The destruction of the pirate forces will give my men much-needed respite and end a debt that I have wished to pay against the pirates all my life. My close friend Felthor had also voiced trepidation for your own command skill, and did not wish to see the lives of these thousands of men wasted upon the water. So you have gone against the will of your future king." Aquilla smirked. "I interpret," Mistnir said, with a raised eyebrow. "The question of what will happen when this trial is done is something that is placed highly amongst my thoughts. When we are done, the world we return to may be far removed from what we left. I would have you choose the right side upon our return." "You mean Alistair's side? You fight for a traitor and have openly declared you are here to stop us from taking a rightful fight to him, and we should trust you." "Aye," Amicus put in. "You have betrayed Ignatius. You have dared walk the line to betray Alistair. Why should we expect anything better from you? The fact that we need him, Andir stood up. Against a simple raiding fleet, we were almost beaten. What hope will we have against the major garrisons of Gladium? We will fight as we always have, Aquilla said. Send yourself back to your master and let us fight for the kingdom. I will not fight alongside such poisonous blood. I do not ask you to, Mistnir smiled satisfyingly. I will continue on this venture as an enemy of the pirate horde, with or without your support on the matter. This is our mission, Amicus protested. Why would we have you run rabid on the seas to obstruct us? Because you have but one choice on the matter, Mistnir smiled, leaning towards him with growing smugness. Fight with us or against us. Fight you must, but at least choose wisely as to whom you fight. You threaten us, Aquilla spat, insulted by the very concept. Horrifically so, and to great effect, Mistnir smiled. I simply show you reason. This is the reality of your situation. Be the wise man and see it for what it is, or don't. It does not concern us. My men and I will sail at the day's first light, and we sail for Gladium. If you have come to your senses, then sail with us. If not, he raised an eyebrow and simply left it there. He and his men went to the camp. Men, who will break wine with me? The men all chorused a cheer. There was no shortage of drinks. He and his men act as the pirates themselves, Amicus observed. Some of them may very well be pirates themselves, a captain cursed, his hands in the two-fingered gesture to ward against evil. And smell the same, one of the Roman captains agreed. Were it not for their blue coats, I would have thought them the same. They have no dignity about them, no honor. Mistnir takes men for what they are, Andir said, his tone the exact opposite of the others around him. Such things have advantage on the sea, as we have seen already. You defend the man? Aquilla demanded. I admit to his skill and leadership, Andir shrugged. He is the best that the kingdom has to offer. It is an honor to sail under his banner. We must make a choice on what we are to do. Amicus turned back to the group, attempting to steer the conversation back to important things. Do we sail against him or with him?